This is Science Lectures 256. Please consider subscribing and like our videos and hit the notification bell to stay updated with our new videos. So today we are going to have a look at basic ecology. So we are going to see what ecology is, and briefly today we are going to have an introduction, definition, and a history of what ecology is all about. So probably let's start off. So basic ecology, by definition, before we dive into the definition, we need to know this word ecology, where it comes from. So this word comes from two Greek words, a Greek origin, and the first word is oikos, and the second word is logos. And the word oikos simply means home. Then the word logos means study. So basically, these are the words of origin of the term ecology. So this is basically the origin of ecology. But now we need to look at the definition of ecology. How would we define ecology? So ecology is simply defined as a scientific study. It's scientific. So we are having a scientific study of the interactions scientific study of the interactions between organisms and their environment or their surroundings and their environment. We can call this environment the surroundings or the surroundings. So this is ecology simply. We are saying it's the scientific study of the interactions between organisms and their surroundings. Now the surroundings or the environment can be either biotic, so some new terms have come into play, biotic, or they can be abiotic. So what is the difference between the biotic and the abiotic? So the biotic components are the living components, are referred to as the living components. They are living components of the ecosystem. Then abiotic, they are the non-living components. So for us to have some examples of the non-living components, we can have things like oxygen. Oxygen is under the abiotic component. Then temperature is under the abiotic components. Then sunlight is also an abiotic component. Then other physical, chemical parameters are also the abiotic components. So that is it basically. We are saying ecology comes from two Greek words, oikos, which means home, logos, which means study, and we are defining it as the scientific study of the interactions between organisms and their surroundings. And we are saying the surroundings can be living, like the organism itself, or they can be non-living. And the living ones are the biotic, and the non-living ones are the abiotic. And under the abiotic components, we are saying we are having examples like oxygen, like temperature, like sunlight, like the physiochemical parameters. We can have also soil type or rock type can also be an abiotic component. Under the biotic, we have some other interactions like predation, things like predation. So this is it basically for the definition, the introduction of the definition. But let's dive into another. So we dive into another concept, and this concept is going to be the concept of ecology. It's more like the history of ecology. How did ecology evolve? We've seen already that it's the scientific study of interactions between organisms and their surroundings, and we've seen the surrounding can be biotic or abiotic. Biotic, living, and abiotic, non-living aspects. So let's see the concept of ecology or the history, the concept of ecology, and this one will include, it's more like the history. It will include the origin of ecology, of the term ecology. So ecology, first of all, was initially ecology was studied by early scientists, and the first scientists to study the topics or to publish articles, to publish, who had references of ecology were Aristotle, and the early Greek, the ancient Greek philosophers. So those days of Aristotle and the Greek philosophers, as the first guys in history, they had references dealing with topics to do with ecology. So in our history, we are looking at two individuals. First of all, Aristotle and the ancient Greek philosophers. These guys were ancient Greek philosophers. They had topics or references of ecology topics. So then we have the father, the person who coined the term ecology, and this guy was a German biologist by the name of Ernst Haeckel. So Ernst Haeckel, this one is the father of the term ecology. This guy coined the term ecology. He came up with the term ecology, and this happened in the year 1869. So Ernst Haeckel talks about this term, brings the term ecology in 1869, and we are saying this guy Ernst Haeckel was a German biologist who coined the term in 1869, and is the father of this term ecology, of the concept of ecology. So, but before Ernst Haeckel comes in to coin the term ecology, there was another scientist within the year of around 1700, within the year of around 1700, and this guy is called Anton van Leeuwenhoek. And this guy, initially in 1700, this guy was studying about topics to deal with ecology, and this man, Anton van Leeuwenhoek, had already had a deeper study of what we refer to as food chains. He had started his research in food chains and population structure. So here the point we are trying to drive home is, though the definition is in 1869, though ecology, the term ecology was coined in 1869 by the scientist Ernst Haeckel, who is a biologist, a German biologist. Sorry. Initially, Aristotle and the Greek philosophers had some references of ecology topics. However, also Anton van Leeuwenhoek in 1700, he was already studying about topics of ecology, and we said those topics were food chains and population structure. This guy was already studying about these topics. However, if you have some knowledge about the history of microbiology, Anton van Leeuwenhoek is considered to be the father of microbiology. The father of microbiology, because he was the first scientist to observe living cells using a microscope. So we can refer to him the father of microbiology, but he's also doing some good inventions in ecology. So these are the first. We are still going on with our history. It is still flowing. Then, before we go further, we want to have a look at this German scientist, Ernst Haeckel, because these scientists find they had whatever they did in the history, but they had the way they defined ecology. So how did this guy Ernst Haeckel define ecology? So Ernst Haeckel, this German scientist, he defined ecology as the study. He defined it simply as the domestic side of organic life, the domestic side of organic life, the domestic side of organic life, and the total relations and the total relations of the organism, and the total relations of the organism, and the total relations of the organisms to the surrounding of the organism, to the surrounding outer world, and we are still continuing with what Anesteco stated, and organic and inorganic, and organic and inorganic factors, and organic and inorganic factors that affect survival of an organism, which influence survival of the organisms. So we are saying Anesteco coined the term, but however he had his specific definition of what ecology is all about, and we are saying Anesteco looked at ecology as the domestic side, the scientific study of the domestic side of organic life, and the relations, the total relations of the organisms to the surrounding outer world, and the organic, and how the organic and inorganic factors influence survival of that organism. So to make it more clear, what Anesteco was referring to as the surrounding outer world is what we currently know as the environment. So according to Anesteco, his environment, he defined environment as the surrounding outer world. Surrounding outer world. So by definition, for him, he just says we are studying the domestic side of organic life. Simply, that means if we are having organic life, let's say life of an organism, it's organic, then this is organism A. So, but its domestic life, the life around it, is what is studied in ecology according to Anesteco. So, studying of the domestic side of organic life, and the total relations, the knowledge of the total relations of the surrounding outer world, and organic and inorganic factors that influence that organism. So that is it basically how Anesteco looked at this concept of ecology. But you don't have to forget, 1869 is the year when he coined the term ecology. Aristotle and Greek philosophers were the earlier people. Anton van Leeuwenhoek also contributed. The father of microbiology also contributed by studying food chains and population structures, even in a year before the term was coined, in 1700. So, we need to look at other scientists, because after Anesteco defining ecology the way we define, there was emergence of some other scientists. So, another scientist who is very important we need to look at is called Charles Elton. Charles Elton. And this guy defined ecology the way he defined it in the year 1927. So that is the year this guy came in, Charles Elton. Now in 1927, Charles Elton comes in and defines ecology as simply the scientific study of plants and animals, in relation to their habitats and habits. So this is how this guy Charles Elton in 1927 defined ecology: the scientific study of plants and animals in relation to their habitats and habits. So if you look at Charles Elton's definition, he was putting emphasis on two things basically: plants and animals. So he was referring it to as the scientific study of plants and animals. However, current research shows that we have 5 kingdoms of classification, and that is, we have kingdom Plantae, we have kingdom Animalia, Animalia. Then we have kingdom Protista. Then we have kingdom Fungi, and we have kingdom Monera. So in kingdom Plantae we have the plants. Animalia we have the different animals. Protista is where we have the protozoans, and we also have in this class we also have in this kingdom, we also have algae. Then fungi, we have things like molds and the rest. Then Monera is where we have bacteria and cyanobacteria. So according to Charles Elton, for him he was looking at the broader thing as all them being plants and animals. However, current research shows us that we have 5 kingdoms of life, but Charles Elton referred to plants and animals as incorporating all the kingdoms. That is why his definition can currently be rephrased as scientific study of organisms. You just modify and say it would rather look like this: scientific study of organisms in relation, of course, in relation to their habitats and habits. So that's how we can modify his definition to reach to what we would like it to be like. So that is Charles Elton basically. Study of plants and animals in relation to their habitats and habits. However, classification doesn't give us only plants and animals like it stated. It gives us a broader thing. So we better define it as the study of organisms in relation to their habitats and habits. So that is it with another scientist. So we are going to look at another scientist we are going to look at in this history of ecology is Andrew Arthur. And this guy, for him, he just defined Andrew Arthur in the year 1963. For him, he had a very simple definition of what ecology is. His definition, and he was simply saying ecology is the study or scientific study of the distribution and abundance of organisms. So for this guy, for him, he looked at ecology in such a perspective: study of distribution and abundance of organisms within the environment. So just simply the study of distribution and abundance of organisms. So that is Andrew Arthur. Then another scientist that comes in after Andrew Arthur, the scientist named Odum. And this guy comes in around, in fact, Andrew Arthur is in 1961. In 1961, that is Andrew Arthur, sorry for that. Then Odum comes in 1963. So Odum is the one for 1963. Then Andrew Arthur is 1961. But when Odum comes in to define ecology, remember Andrew Arthur is defining as the study of the distribution and abundance of organisms. And Odum, when Odum comes in, he simply defines it as the study of structure of the structure and function of organisms. Structure and function of organisms. So this is how this guy studies ecology, Odum, in 1963. However, Odum felt that he's not well convinced with whatever he defined and came back again in 1971. Odum again in 1971. And he defines again. And again he defines in a different way. He defines ecology in a different way. And he defines this simply as the study of how factors influence, of how different factors organisms. But it studies these factors in form of human factors. The influence of human factors on the distribution of different organisms. And such human factors, he highlighted things like pollution, and he highlighted things like deforestation. We can also think of things like eutrophication. Basically, Odum in 1971 is looking at how there is an influence of humans, basically man, onto the ecosystem. But in 1963 is looking at the function and nature, structure, function, and nature of organisms. So that is it for Odum. Then finally, another group, there emerged another group of scientists. And these two guys also had their contribution towards ecology. And those scientists were Salisbury, and this guy together with Krebs. And this was in around 1985. And Salisbury comes in around 1973. This one, 1985. But these guys, what they did, what you should take note of is that they modified the definition. There was modification of the definition of Andrew Arthur. So this guy is just modified whatever Andrew Arthur stated. Remember, we said Andrew Arthur said that ecology is simply the study of distribution and abundance of organisms. So when these two guys came in, Salisbury in 1973 and Krebs in 1985, they modified Andrew Arthur's definition. And they looked at ecology now in a new perspective as the study of interactions, which influence or which determine the distribution and abundance of organisms. So this is how Krebs and Salisbury are defining. They are modifying Andrew Arthur's definition, and we said Andrew Arthur stated that is the scientific study of distribution and abundance of organisms. However, for them, they modify it in a way that they say there is the study of the interactions which determine the distribution and abundance of microorganisms, or abundance and distribution, of organisms, not microorganisms. So these guys gave some examples of these interactions, and the interactions include things like competition, because competition is an interaction. It is either intraspecific or interspecific competition. Then another thing we can give in whatever the interactions they were looking at, courtship, the courtship ability of specific organisms such that they can reproduce and give birth to more live young ones. Then another thing they looked at in the interactions, things like pollination. Then with symbiosis, a variety of stuff included in the interactions there. So basically, this is more like the history of ecology. So let's have a summary of whatever we've seen in this history of ecology. So the basic summary of whatever we've seen, because it's very important for us to summarize, to break down this history in a way that is more digestible. So first of all, we said it comes from two Greek words, oikos and logos. Oikos, home, logos, study. But we said the term ecology, initially, ecology topics were referenced by Aristotle. We said Aristotle for the start. Aristotle and other Greek philosophers. So these are the first major players within our field of ecology. Then we say the first guy to coin the term ecology is a German biologist by the name of Ernst Haeckel, Ernest Haeckel, in the year 1869. That's when this guy coined the term. But before this guy coined the term, scientists like Anton van Leeuwenhoek, the father of microbiology, Anton van Leeuwenhoek, in around 1700s, this guy had already studied things to deal topics of ecology like food chains, and population structure. So this guy had already studied this. Food chains, population structures, Anton van Leeuwenhoek in 1700. However, for Ernest Haeckel, whatever we need to know is that he had a well-defined ecology, and he defined it as the study of the domestic side of organic life and the total relations of the knowledge of the total relations of the surrounding outer world. Which surrounding outer world we call the environment. So that is it with Ernest Haeckel and Anton van Leeuwenhoek in 1700. There was emergence of another scientist in 1927, and this scientist is Charles Elton in 1927. So this guy comes in 1927. He defines ecology as simply the study of plants and animals in relation to their habits and habitats. However, we said he called it plants and animals, yet we know that plants and animals are not the only classification, and his definition can be modified as the study of organisms in relation to their habitats and habits, or habits and habitats. After Charles Elton, emergence of another scientist, and this was Andrew Arthur in 1961. This one defines ecology as the study of distribution and abundance of organisms. Then after Andrew Arthur, Odum comes in. Odum in 1963, and he defines ecology simply as the study of function and nature of organisms. Then finally Odum again comes in 1971 and again redefines ecology. Finally, we have Krebs in 1985 with another scientist called Salisbury, and they redefined ecology using whatever Andrew Arthur defined. For them, they modified Andrew Arthur's definition. So that is it basically for the history of ecology. So